Good morning, students. How are you all and other members of your family? As you know, that whole world is suffering with the COVID-19 or coronavirus. The only option we are left with is to stay at home. So, though we are all staying at home, though it's a lockdown in the country, our studies, no doubt, they are being affected. Therefore, we started your online classes. But before starting your class, I want to tell you something, that we should not give up until we get something right, and we should always be determined to face all kind of challenges in our life. So, taking the name of the God, we will start our class. So class 10th, first of all, mark the syllabus. So from the history, the first chapter, the first war of independence. Second chapter, growth of nationalism. Third chapter, first phase of the Indian national movement. Fourth chapter, second phase of the Indian national movement. These are the four chapters from history, and one chapter from the civics, that is the Union Parliament. Yeah. So please come to the chapter number 3, that is first phase of the Indian national movement. The history of the Indian national movement is divided into 3 phases. The first phase, as you can see here, the early nationalist phase. Second one, the assertive phase. And the third one, Gandhian era. So starting with the first, the early nationalist. So in the early years, initial years, the Congress was led by a group of leaders known as the early nationalists. These were the members of educated middle class, consisting of professionals like lawyers, barristers, teachers, and officials, those who were having Western liberal and radical thoughts. Most of them, they were educated in England, and they felt that the Britishers, whatever the Britishers they are doing to India, they are doing just, and they were not aware about the true nature of the Britishers. Some of the prominent leaders of early nationalists, they were W.C. Banerjee, Rajbihari Ghosh, Surendranath Banerjee, Dadabhai Naroji, Gopal Krishan Gokhale, Ranade, P.R. Naidu, then Pandit Madan Mohan, then some of the Englishmen like Hume and Wedenberg. These were some of the people, some of the leaders, those who were called the early nationalists. The early nationalist leaders who led the Congress, they were open-minded and moderate in their nature. Come to the next page. They asked for constitutional and other reforms within the framework of the British rule, because they were having full faith whatever the Britishers they were doing. So some of the beliefs of the early nationalists, they feel like, first point, they had faith in the sense of justice, fair play, honesty, and integrity of the Britishers. It was their hope that the British would grant home rule to Indians. Third, they believe that the British rule and had many benefits, like they were able to remove the social ills like sati, untouchability, and child marriages. They were of the opinion that the British would help Indians govern themselves according to the Western standards, and they never believed Britishers that they are the reason for the downfall of the Indian society. They have said that the main obstacle in the Indian progress was their social and economic backwardness. And last point, they relied that whatever they want to achieve, they will achieve through peaceful methods. They will not use any other methods in order to get the freedom from the Britishers. So some of the demands of the early nationalists. Students, the demands, they are not in your syllabus, but though it is given in your book, I'll explain. Please go through it at least learn 2 to 3 demands given under different heads. So they are categorized into 4 different heads. The first one, constitutional reforms. So under constitutional reforms, the sum of the demands, they are abolition of Indian Council, expansion of the Legislative Council and Legislative Assemblies, both at the central level and at the provinces, increase in the membership of Indians by including some more members to be elected in the local bodies like Chamber of Commerce, universities, etc. And they also raised the slogan that no taxation without representation. By the beginning of 20th century, they made a demand for Swaraj or self-government within the British Empire. And the last point, adequate representation of Indians in the Executive Council of the Viceroy. So Viceroy was to be sent in India, and he is also having his own council. So in his council, maximum people should be from India. So this was under the constitutional reforms. Now the second, it is the economic reforms. So under economic reforms, they want reduction in land revenue and protection of peasants from the Jimidars, and they also want that reduction in expenditure on the army, and that money can be used for the welfare or for the health and education purposes. And they want that an inquiry should be set up so that they can know about the problem, that why India is growing poverty and famines again and again. Then availability of cheap credits to peasants through agricultural banks, development of banking, irrigation, medical and health facilities, and then industrial growth should be there, so that heavy taxes should be imposed on imported goods, and more development loans should be given for the development of iron, coal, paper and sugar. Total abolition of salt tax and the duty on sugar. So these were some of the economic reforms. Now third point, it is administrative demands. So they demanded for services that Indian civil services should be simultaneously conducted in England and India. And secondly, they want the judiciary should be completely separated from the executives. Increase in the power of the local bodies, then repeal of the Arms Act, License Act, then spread of primary education among the masses, wider employment of Indians in the higher grades, improvement of the police system to make it honest, effective and popular. So these were some of the administrative demands. Now next come the defense of the civil rights. Under this, they want removal of the restriction which was imposed by the British government on the freedom of speech, underline, and the freedom of the press, please underline. Second, abolition of the Preventive Detention Act, that is, individuals should be given the liberties, should be given the freedom to express. Third, right to assemble and to form association in order to get their demand fulfilled from the Britishers. Now the next topic, it is the methods of the early nationalists. As we have already read that they use the constitutional methods. Therefore, their methods, they are popularly known as the constitutional agitation methods. So these methods, they are divided into two parts. The first it is the first set of methods. Under this, what kind of methods they use? First, they held meetings where speeches were made. Secondly, they made use of press to criticize government policies. Third, they sent memorandums and petitions to government officials and the British Parliament. So these were some of the methods which they opted under the first set of methods. That is, first of all, meetings, speeches, make use of press, then they send memorandums, petitions to the government and to the British Parliament in order to fulfill their demands. Other than first set of method, they use second set of method, under which they make use of 3 P's. Just underline. That is, petitions, prayers and protest. Second, the British Committee of the Indian National Congress was set up in London, and they publish a weekly journal, India, to present India's conditions before the British public. Then some deputation of Indian leaders was sent to Britain, and Dadabhai Naoroji spent a major part of his life in Britain to create awareness among the British people about the Indians. Now students, next point, it's the achievements of the early nationalists. Though we have studied about the various demands, we studied that in order to fulfill their demands, the various methods which they adopted. Now what was their achievements? The first one, the early nationalists created national awakening among the people that they belongs to a common country, that is India. Secondly, they were able to train the people by popularizing the ideas of democracy, civil liberties, secularism and nationalism. Third point, they were able to expose the true nature of the British rule in India. Fourth, the political and the economic programs established the truth that India must be ruled in the interest of the Indians, because this country is of Indians and this country should be run as the people of India wanted. Some of the efforts of the early nationalists, these are some of the reforms. The first one, the appointment of the Public Service Commission. Then a House of Commons was set up, which was conducting the ICS exam simultaneously in London and in India. Then they also appointed the Valway Commission in order to know about the Indian expenditures. And then the Indian Council Act was also being passed. So next topic, it is a criticism of the early nationalists. So these early nationalists or moderate leaders, they were criticized by others because the first point, the method used by the early nationalists of passing resolution and sending petitions were criticized as inadequate, because Britishers, they were not considering their petitions or memorandums. They were not giving any kind of answers to them. Second, they failed to realize that British and Indian interests clashed with each other, because Britishers, they want Indian resources to increase their wealth, not to increase the India's wealth. Third, the early nationalists failed to draw the masses into the mainstreams. So though these people, I have told you in the beginning also that these people, they belongs to professionals, lawyers, barristers, etc., etc. So they were not able to involve the other masses. They were able to involve only this class, not the other. So the people, those who were the part of these leaders, they were less in number. Now, what was the official attitude towards the Congress? So British government in the beginning, they took the Congress movement with the favor, but slowly they felt that whatever the requirement or whatever the Indians they are asking from the Britishers, that is not possible. And Lord Dufferin, he said that National Congress, the leaders of the National Congress, they are disloyal Babus and violent Williams. So they don't want these people to form any kind of organization. Then Britishers, in order to stop their activities, they adopted the policies of divide and rule. They encouraged Syed Ahmad Ali Khan and many other leaders to go against the Congress and to start the anti-Congress movements. They try to sow the seed, or they try to put the gap between the Hindus and Muslims by telling different concepts to each other. But whatever they have done, their activities, Britishers' activities, they make the Congress more powerful. So these are the three different prominent early nationalist leaders about which we are going to study. The first one, it is Dadabhai Naoroji, also known as the Grand Old Man of India. He was born in a Parsi family. Then he worked as a professor of mathematics. Later he went to England and became a partner in a firm. Then he was elected to the municipal corporation and later to the town council. He founded the Bombay Association, please underline. Then he also started a newspaper, Rast Guftar. Then he started a magazine, Dharam Margdarshak. And he also started the movement against the Vernacular Press Act and also tried to give good treatment to the poor peasants from the Jimidars. Now, students, whenever we are going to write or we are going to attempt the answer for these questions, we have to write the answer in the points. So from these following things, you will make the points and then you will write the answer related to these questions. His contribution, number 1, Indian unofficial ambassador. When he was in England, Dadabhai Naoroji, he was looked upon as Indian unofficial ambassador, fighting for his country. He founded the London Indian Society. He was the first Indian, underline, to become the member of the British House of Commons in England. While he was a member of the British Parliament, he brought to the notice of the House important matter related to India. And he also fought for the educated Indians for high post. It was due to his efforts that a resolution was passed in favor of holding the ICS examination in England and India simultaneously. Later, he founded the East India Association in London. So this was under the heading Indian Unofficial Ambassador. Now the second head, role in the Congress. What are the different role he played in the Congress? Dadabhai Naoroji in the Congress was praiseworthy. He took an active part in the foundation of the Indian National Congress, underline, and was elected as president thrice. Resolutions on self-government, please underline, boycott, Swadeshi, and national education were passed by the Congress under his leadership. Come to the next page. The credit for demanding Swaraj from the Congress platform for the first time goes to him. He said that the Congress wanted self-government or Swaraj like that of the United Kingdoms or the colonies. So next point, expose the economic ills of India. As an economic thinker, economic ills of India was the exploitation of India by the Britishers. And on Indian economy, he has written Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Please underline. His famous drain theory explained how India's wealth was being drained to England through various ways. So this was about Dadabhai Naoroji. So we have read about the Dadabhai Naoroji, his contribution, his role in the Congress, and what was the various other work which was done by this prominent person. So students, we will do only up to here only, up to the Dadabhai Naoroji. And now what you are going to do, you will go through the chapter properly and you will find out if any doubt will be there. In the next class, we will complete this chapter.